Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're coming across my video for the first time, please kindly subscribe to join the family. We have valuable content that can help in your fashion journey. If you're an old subscriber, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the support on my videos. Today I'll be making a short with elastic at the waist. It's a continuation from the previous video from which I made that kimono top I was wearing at the beginning. The link will be in the description in case you're interested. So for my shorts, I'm going to be using 16 inches for my length. If you can make yours as short or as long as you want. So for the crotch depth, if you are making a high-waisted pants or a high-waisted trouser which is above your navel or higher than your lower waistline, you divide your hip by 3. But for mine, I didn't want mine to be so high-waisted, so I divided my hip. I added 1 inch to my hip. First of all, that was the ease I wanted. I didn't want it to be too free or too tight. So I added 1 inch. My hip was 39, so I added 1 inch to make it 40. So I divided the hip by 4. So I already have 1 inch extra there. So my band is still not included. My band, I'm going to be cutting it separate because I want it to be a bit higher. But if you divide your hip by 3, it's going to be really high. So your band is going to be included. You can cut your band out or you separate your band when marking out your waist to crotch. So now I'm going to just mark that 10 inch on the width and on the vertical and horizontal parts of my measurement, because I'm going to be using the hip measurement as well for the waist since it's going to be having an elastic. So now this is my crotch line. So for the crotch line, I'll be going up by 2 inches to get my hip line from the crotch line. Now to get my crotch extension, I'm going to be dividing my hip measurement by 20 to get my front crotch extension. So I'll be dividing my hip measurement by 20, which gave me 2 inches. So I'm going to just extend it by 2 inches. So on the hip line, I'll be coming out by 0.2, just a tiny bit from the hip line to just be able to connect smoothly from the crotch to that part of my crotch extension. Now on the front, I'm going to be coming down by 0.75 to just have a slope at the waist region. So now this is the 0.25 I came out by. Then I'll just connect my crotch extension. This is to avoid your crotch extension, your crotch from being too tight. So now I'm going to be dividing that crotch line into 2, and I'll be marking the middle all the way down to the length of my shorts to make sure that it's on the middle to get equal measurements. So now I'll be adding my 2 inches for my folding in allowance. I didn't have allowance that we used to fold in my shorts, so I've added 2 inches. That will be my hemline. So now I'm going to be determining how wide I want the leg to, the opening of the thigh to be. So I'm just coming in because you can just take it straight, but I just wanted it to have a little bit of shape. So I just came in by 0.25 on the side of the waist, side of the hip, sorry. So I didn't want that part to go upward, so I just connected it from there straight up. Then I'll do the same thing. What I have on this side, I'll measure it. I'll measure what I have on this side and add it to the other side as well. Then I'll just add it here as well. Add it here to make sure that the both measurements are equal. So I'll just add it on this side. Then I'll connect from my crotch extension down. So I just want the upper part to have a little bit of slope, but it shouldn't be too deep. Then I'll connect it straight downwards as well. So for the waist, I'm not adding any shape because it's going to have an elastic. So I'm just going to cut everything out now. So this is my hemline. I've labeled my hemline. Then I'll place it on a fresh sheet of paper. So actually, I had already drafted this on the main fabric, but it wasn't clear, so I had to draft it on paper. So on the waistline on the back, I'm going up by 1.5 inches. That is to help cover your bum. So on this extension on the back, I'm dividing my hip measurement by 10, and I will extend it by what I have. So I'll just extend it, and I came down by half an inch so that the slope there will come out a bit. So now I'm adding allowance of 1 inch, 1.5 inch, sorry, from the upper part down to the crotch extension. So I'll just use my curve ruler now to just make it, but make sure that it's not too curvy. So I'm adding the 1.5 inch all the way down as well. Then on this part, I'm just going to be adding 1 inch for my sewing allowance because I'll be weaving and sewing it. So I just added 1 inch on this part. So I'll just connect it with my curve ruler. I'll just connect everything that I've drawn out. So I'll cut it out and place it on my fabric. So like I said, I had already drafted this pattern out and even made the short, and I realized that it wasn't visible on the fabric. So I had to draft another one because the fabric I'll be using now might be a bit different from what would appear at the final outcome. So I'll be making a pocket. So first of all, I've cut it out on the fabric. So for the pocket, on the sides of the front of the trouser, I'll be marking how long or how, depends on the size of your hand. So but from the front, the sides of the trouser, I'll just be coming down by 7 inches to mark how deep the opening of the pocket will be. So I'm marking 7 inches for this. So I'll mark 7 inches. Then the opening at the upper part, I'll be marking 2 inches. Then I'll connect it slanty to touch this side where I marked the 7 inches. So for the length of the pocket, I'm going to be cutting, I'll be cutting 2 pieces of fabrics like this. Then for the width, I'll be using 8.5, and for the length, I'm using 12 inches. So first of all, I'll cut out the part of the trouser that I marked the pocket on. So I'll open up this fabric because one part is going to be having this opening. So I'm just cutting off this pocket like this, just the way you see me cut it, and then I placed it on both sides of the pocket are facing each other. So I'm cutting it on just one side because one side is going to be sewn into this. You see what I mean? One side is going to be sewn on the part that I cut out. So it's supposed to be an exact what you cut out. It should be the same thing that will be on the fabric for the pocket. So this is how it's going to be. By the time I'm done sewing it, then I'll fold it in and make sure that it is equal and it's going to balance out like this. So I'll just go to my sewing machine and do that. I'll first of all join it at the crotch and come back and join the pocket as well. So I also cut out the strip that I'll be using for the band at the waist where the elastic is going to pass through. So if you want to do this, you have to use a wide elastic, but I didn't have a wide elastic, so I used a tiny one. So now I've gone to join, not a tiny one, sorry, the one that is not up to 2 inches. So I'm going to join the crotch and also the pocket. I use a hemming gum to hold it down at that part. When I'm sewing, I sewed it with an hemming gum to just hold it in place. You can add your paper stay if that's what you have to just give it weight. So now this is how I'm going to fold it in and make sure that everything is balanced. There's no way packing. Then I'll use my pin to hold it in place first of all. You'll notice that everywhere is balanced. There's no way that is pulling to a different side. So when I'm pinned it down to make sure that everywhere is balanced, I will go and sew the pocket, the under part of the pocket. So I'll just go and sew it like this. So I'll do same. You notice the hemming gum that I used to hold that part of the pocket. So now I've gone to sew it. So everything is in place now. So what I'll do is I'll put the back on the front because now everything is equal. I'll put the back on the front and then I'll go and hold down my allowance. So I've sewn the pockets inside. So you'll notice that the back is bigger than the front. It doesn't matter because the back has a bump, so it's usually going to be bigger than the front. So I'll first connect from crotch depth to crotch depth, and you notice that the middle of the front is a bit lower than that of the back because we took the front down. It can't be the same length as if you notice your trousers, it's usually lower on the front. So now I'll mark my crotch depth to crotch depth and I'll sew it round with 1/2 inch. Then on the sides, I'm going to sew it with the allowance that I added. So now I've gone ahead to sew it, and this is what I have. So for the band, now this is how I'm going to be sewing my elastic on it. I'll first of all measure around the waist of the trouser. After measuring around the waist, I'm going to cut it on what I have. I will add extra 1 inch because there's an elastic, so it tends to stretch. It might likely not be enough. I'll add extra 1 inch and cut it. Then I will take my elastic. Like I said, you're supposed to use a wide elastic of about 2 inches, but I didn't have that, so I used this one. So this is how you do. You put your elastic in between the crease line and then you sew it. So I'll put my elastic in between the crease line because this band is going to be attached separately. Then I will make sure that I go to the other ending of this band, and then just the way I'm going to do it is I'll put it facing each other and take the elastic as well, and then I'll sew it this way, just the same way I did for the front. I'm going to sew it, but it's going to be sewn now together. It's going to be sewn together. Then I'll sew it like this. And make sure that you add allowance for this joining as well. Like after adding an extra 1 inch, you can add extra half for this joining. So I'm going to sew it this way, and then I'll trim out the excess so it will relax. Now this is what I'm going to have by the time I'm done. So what I'm going to do is that I'll make sure that I push the elastic towards the edge. Make sure that you don't sew on the elastic. So I'm going to push it towards the edge, and I'm going to sew the elastic around the band, but don't sew on it. Make sure that your thread or your needle is not going to touch the elastic. So use your hand to feel it in a way that you are sewing only the fabric. As you are sewing, you are going to be dragging the elastic because it might likely not be enough. It's stretchy, so it's going to be enough by the time you have stretched it out. So this is how I'm just going to sew it all round. So I'm just going to sew it all around till the end. Then you can trim out a tiny bit for it to be equal. So you can also run an extra stitch. You can sew your elastic on the waist this way, but you can also run an extra line. Now this is going to be on the elastic itself, so it's going to just give it an extra stitch line. You know those elastic patterns that you have on joggers, that's what it's just going to give to you. But as you are sewing, make sure that you are stretching it out. So now this is what it gave me, but you can use it the way I did it, the way I did it with the first result initially. So I'm going to trim out the excess, but don't trim too much that it doesn't get to the parts where you have your elastic. Make sure that you trim and leave where you can sew with your elastic to your trouser band. So now I'm just going to be sewing this now to the band of my trousers. You can weave around your waist and weave around the elastic before joining, but I did mine after, and that was a bit difficult because I had to make sure that any part of the elastic doesn't get into the weaving machine. So I'm just going to sew it all the way around like this. So make sure that you are stretching it out so that it's going to be enough. If you don't stretch it out, it might not be enough to go around. You know it's an elastic, it stretches, so stretch it out so that it's going to, you cut exactly what was on the waist. You added an extra 1 inch, but sometimes it might get shorter if you don't stretch it out very well. So this is how you stretch it out. You sew the part that there was no, where you have only your stitch allowance, where there was no elastic, that's where you are going to sew on. So now I've gotten to the end of it, so I'll just go and weave around the waist. Like I said, make sure that you weave around your waist and the round of your elastic first off, or before joining it. It will just help because going to weave it like this now, it's a bit stressful, but you can do it, but it's a bit stressful. So now this is the final outcome of the short by the time I'm done sewing. So I went to weave it round the waist. This is what I had. So guys, that is the final outcome of the short. I'll just go and hem the bottom of my short. And that is the final outcome. Thank you guys, thank you so much for watching. Please kindly like and subscribe to the channel. Bye, see you in the next one.